My husband secretly transferred $200,000 to a strange account and plotted against me, so I silently froze everything before he could strike back. I'm Lyra. I thought I had a marriage built on trust until I woke up at 2 a.m. and overheard my husband whisper, "It's done. She'll never find out." $200,000 gone, sent to an account I'd never heard of. So, before he could file for divorce, I froze everything. But that was just the beginning: fake documents, anonymous threats. He didn't just want to leave me, he wanted to erase me. And now, I can't stop wondering how long he had been planning it. Was any of it ever real? Do you know what it's like to sleep beside someone who's already plotting your exit? I woke up to the kind of stillness that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels wrong. My hand instinctively reached for the other side of the bed, expecting warmth, a familiar shape, the quiet rhythm of his breath. But the sheets were cool, flat. He hadn't just stepped out, he'd been gone. Maybe he couldn't sleep. Maybe he needed water. I sat up slowly, rubbing the haze from my eyes. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Only moonlight spilled through the blinds, painting silver streaks across the floor. Then I heard it, a voice, his voice, careful, low. "It's done. She'll never find out." I stopped breathing for a split second. I froze completely. Every instinct screamed to rush in and demand an explanation, but I didn't move. I stayed still, listening, rationalizing. Maybe it was work. Maybe he was watching a show. Maybe I misunderstood. Or maybe I didn't want to know. A faint laugh followed, then the soft clink of glass. I crept to the hallway, each step featherlight, a quiet rehearsal in muscle memory. I caught the sound of the fridge closing, footsteps. He was coming back. I darted under the covers just before the bedroom door opened. I lay still, breathing evenly, pretending. The mattress dipped. He settled beside me, his breath long, exhaling like someone who just offloaded a burden. I shifted slightly and mumbled, "Where were you?" "Bathroom," he answered without hesitation. "And the call?" "Client, East Coast stuff. You know how it is." I let silence do the rest. Then I rolled over and faced the window, heart pounding, thoughts racing. By morning, I still hadn't slept. Once he slipped into a deep snore, I got up, quiet, barefoot. I walked to the kitchen and pulled my phone from the charger. I hadn't checked our joint account in months. That was Callan's role, his financial hat, as he called it. But this time, something in me refused to stay blind. I logged in. A transfer, $200,000 to something called Kale Enterprises. I stared at the name. It wasn't a client, not a vendor, not something we'd ever discussed. My stomach dropped. I refreshed the screen. The number didn't change. Gone. I snapped out of my fog, opened my private cloud, and uploaded everything: screenshots, logs, transaction details, triple encrypted. Sent it to a backup email no one else knew. I didn't confront him, not yet. This wasn't some spontaneous betrayal, it was premeditated, strategic. And I've been a strategist for 15 years. At 6:48 a.m., I called the bank. By 7:15, the account was frozen. I still hadn't said a word to him. But I didn't need to. The morning crept in with a gentleness I didn't trust. I stood at the kitchen window, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching light scatter across the glass buildings downtown. The city was waking up, but inside our apartment, time felt suspended. Behind me, the bedroom door creaked open. Callan's footsteps were soft, too soft, like a man who wanted to seem casual. "Morning," he said, voice laced with the kind of brightness I used to find charming. "Didn't think you'd be up this early." I turned, offered him a tired smile. "Couldn't sleep." He walked over, pressed a kiss against my temple. I didn't flinch, but I didn't lean in either. "Long night?" I asked lightly. He chuckled. "Yeah, had some stuff on my mind. You know how it is. Startup life never really clocks out." He moved past me and reached for the French press. As he poured himself a mug, I watched him, his hand steady, his body relaxed. He looked like someone without a care in the world. He took a sip, then glanced at me. "Hey, I was thinking maybe we should consolidate our emergency info." I arched a brow. "What do you mean?" He shrugged, casual. "Just stuff like passwords, accounts, contacts. You know, in case anything ever happens to either of us." "In case something happens," I repeated. He smiled, warm and easy. "Don't look at me like that. It's just a smart thing to do. I mean, what if I got hit by a bus tomorrow?" That was Callan's style: wrap poison in honey, wrap a threat in concern. I set my mug down. "I'll think about it." "Of course," he said quickly. "No rush. Just figured it'd be good to have everything in one place. Just in case." The words hung there, innocent to an outsider, alarming to someone who had seen the back end of a $200,000 transfer vanish into a ghost account. He wandered into the living room, humming. I stayed rooted in place, head down. The manipulation wasn't loud, it was smooth, polished. And I'd fallen for it before. I sat on the edge of the couch, flipping through a stack of unread mail. And tucked among them was a blank form, subtle but deliberate, an asset declaration sheet, my name already filled in at the top. He hadn't said a word about it. "No, hey, could you look this over? No, mind signing this when you have a sec?" Just slipped into the pile like junk mail, as if it had always been there. I picked it up, studied the lines meant to list every account I owned, every dollar, every property, every digital wallet. My jaw clenched. He was playing the long game, but he was sloppy. I folded the paper slowly, slid it back between the envelopes, and pushed them aside. He wouldn't catch me off guard twice. As I sat there, pretending to scroll my phone, my mind drifted back to last Thursday, the dinner he insisted we have with my mother, just the three of us. He said, "Haven't caught up with Era in a while." It had seemed innocent enough. I hadn't suspected a thing. But now, retracing every word, every pause, I saw it differently. He'd booked the place she loved, the little French bistro off Clark. He ordered her favorite wine, toasted to family and the future, said things like "Lyra and I are looking at long-term plans, real stability stuff." And I had smiled, played along. My mother had teared up halfway through her creme brulee. "I'm so glad you two are still solid," she'd said. "In today's world, real marriages are rare." Callan reached for my hand then, squeezing it just enough to make me believe he meant it. It wasn't love, it was theater. He was rehearsing the lines for an audience. Looking back, I realized he had never mentioned us in that dinner. It was always preparation, structure, legacy, words that belonged in trust documents, not toasts. I came back to the present just as he re-entered the room. "Any plans for today?" he asked, sipping coffee casually, scrolling through his phone. "I have calls at 10, then I'll head into the office for a bit." He nodded. "I might swing by the bank this afternoon. Thinking of restructuring a few things on my end." I didn't respond. He was testing me, poking the wire to see if it sparked. He thought I'd walk right into it, confess that I'd frozen the account, that I was suspicious, that I was scared. But I wasn't scared anymore. I was quiet, and quiet women get underestimated. He dropped the last sip of coffee into the sink and disappeared down the hall to shower. I waited until the water started running, then pulled the document out of the mail pile and stared at it one more time. There was a time I would have signed this without blinking, trusted that whatever Callan put in front of me was safe. That time had passed. I tore the form in half, then again and again, until it was nothing but confetti in the trash can. "You want to play games, Callan? You just sat across from your new opponent." 2 mornings later, I found the folder. It was tucked inside a stack of mail on the console table, angled just enough to catch my eye, cream-colored, neat, labeled Taxes March. Nothing threatening at first glance. I carried it to the kitchen, sat down with a glass of water, and flipped it open. There were receipts, summaries, and then a document I'd seen before, but not like this, a property transfer agreement. And my name was typed on the signature line. I stared at it for a long moment. Not handwritten, not initialed, not signed, an inky, typed, clean one, like someone wanted to skip the messy step of actually asking me. I turned the page back and forth, scanning for details: the condo, the one in my name, a transfer of partial ownership, effective immediately. All it needed was a signature, and someone had faked mine. The pressure in my chest tightened like a vice. 2 weeks ago, Callan had asked me to sign a couple of forms while I was on a call. He stood beside me, waving a pen, smiling like it was nothing. I told him to leave them on the counter. I never signed. I remember that moment with absolute clarity because I'd made a mental note to review the forms later, and when I came back, they were gone. Now here they were, slightly altered, rebranded as tax paperwork. This wasn't carelessness, this was deliberate. I took out my phone, snapped high-res photos of each page, and uploaded them to my encrypted cloud folder. Then I forwarded everything to Marin, my lawyer. No explanation, just a subject line: Callan, for reference. I didn't storm into the bedroom. I didn't throw the papers in his face. If you're going to war, you don't announce it from the front porch. You prepare. I made it into the office that morning without breaking down, which in itself felt like a small miracle. My assistant, Nessa, met me with a cautious smile as I stepped into my glass-walled corner suite. "Morning," she said, voice a little too gentle. "You've got back-to-back starting at 9. Perfect." "Thanks, Nessa," I said, trying to focus. I was halfway through scanning a client brief when she knocked again, this time softly. I looked up. Her eyes didn't meet mine. "You're not going to like this," she said, stepping inside and shutting the door behind her. I straightened. "Heard what?" "Someone forwarded an email. Anonymous sender. It's about you." My heart didn't race, it just went still. She pulled out her phone and handed it to me. I scrolled through the message slowly, reading each word as if it were printed in acid. "Be aware that Lyra Halden has a history of moving joint marital funds into unregistered crypto accounts under false LLC names. Her team should review financial ethics before allowing her continued access to client portfolios." No name, no proof, just enough ambiguity to stir suspicion. And it had been sent to my boss and copied to HR. I handed the phone back. "Did you read it?" She nodded. "It's garbage. But the timing." I smiled faintly. "Yeah, the timing. That was Callan's fingerprint, subtle sabotage, whispered damage." I returned to my desk, opened my email, and there it was, flagged as important. Subject: quick HR check-in today, 2 p.m. That's how it always starts, quiet, polite, then it snowballs. I stared at the subject line, not moving. This was what he wanted. If he couldn't control me with money, he'd try to destroy my name, my work, my credibility, everything I'd built over 15 years of showing up early, delivering under pressure, climbing one rung at a time. I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked to the window. Below me, Chicago pulsed, cold air and car horns and ambition. I could have screamed, but what was the point? "You steal 200 grand, I whispered, "and still have the nerve to make me the villain." I didn't cry, not anymore. I watched my reflection in the window glass, same eyes, same skin, but something had shifted beneath the surface. No more hesitation, no more hoping he'd stop. He had fired the first shot. Now it was my turn. By the time I stepped into HR the next day, I had already rehearsed every answer. The room smelled like printer toner and faint cologne, neutral, forgettable. My manager, Devin, sat with a polite expression that didn't reach his eyes. "We just wanted to check in," he said. "There's been a message circulating. Nothing formal, of course, but we need to make sure everything's clean on your end. You understand?" I nodded once. "Of course." He used words like protocol and standard inquiry, but the implication was clear: I was a liability until proven otherwise. I didn't flinch. I answered their questions, offered to supply any records they needed, and when it was over, I walked out with my head held high. But my fists were clenched so tightly inside my coat pockets that my nails left half-moons on my palms. This wasn't fear anymore, it was something colder, more exact. Back at the apartment, the silence greeted me like an unwanted guest, the kind that sits too close and smells like old secrets. I dropped my keys in the dish and froze. Callan was already home. He sat at the kitchen island, calm, composed, drinking mineral water like it was scotch. "We need to talk," he said, barely looking up. I didn't respond. I hung up my coat, walked into the kitchen, and saw the folder in front of him, cream-colored. My stomach sank. He slid it toward me with 2 fingers. Inside, petition for divorce, filed that morning. He was asking for 50% of our shared assets and spousal support. I blinked. "Is this a joke?" He didn't smile. "We've grown apart, Lyra." I stared at him, searching his face for any trace of decency, but there was nothing, just that corporate calm he wore when firing someone at a board meeting. "You stole from me," I said flatly, "then slandered me at work, and now you're suing me." "I didn't slander anyone," he replied. "People talk. I can't control that." "Don't lie to me, Callan," I snapped. "Not now." He leaned back on the stool, completely unfazed. "You've been erratic, secretive." I thought maybe this was the cleanest way forward. "You thought," I echoed. "You always think. You calculate. But you forgot one thing." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" I stepped closer, dropped the folder on the counter like it burned. "I know everything." His expression didn't change, but the glass in his hand stopped halfway to his lips. "I know about Kale Enterprises. I know the signature you faked. I know about the email to my boss. I even know that you made it look like a crypto fraud because that's exactly what you would believe a woman like me would fall for." Callan didn't answer right away. His jaw twitched, and then that familiar hollow smirk returned. "You don't want to do this, Lyra." My voice dropped to a calm I barely recognized as mine. "Is that a threat?" He shook his head slowly, voice low. "It's a warning." I stepped back. Something inside me clicked, like a gear sliding into place. The version of me that still wanted to believe this man was salvageable was gone. In her place was someone who knew better, someone who had nothing left to lose. "I already moved my assets, Callan." His face finally cracked, just slightly, but enough, the first flicker of panic. "I've been planning this longer than you think," I added. "You're not ahead. You're barely catching up." He stood up slowly, as if posture could reclaim control. But he didn't speak. I left him standing there in our designer kitchen, surrounded by quartz countertops and empty intentions. I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't look back. I took the elevator to the lobby, stepped out into the freezing wind, and pulled out my phone. I dialed the number from memory. Marin answered on the second ring. "Hey, what's going on?" "It's time," I said, voice firm. There was a pause. "What did he do now?" "He filed," I said. "He wants half, and he's playing dirty." Another beat, then Marin replied, "Then so will I. Meet me at the office tomorrow. We start building." I nodded. "No more defense. I want to hit back." "You will," she said. "But we'll do it clean." I hung up and slipped the phone into my pocket, the air slicing through my coat like reality settling in. The woman who had once waited for Callan to apologize no longer existed. There would be no apology, only consequence. The next morning, I was in Marin's office before the sun had fully risen. She was already at her desk, sleeves rolled, coffee untouched. Papers were spread like battlefield maps. She didn't offer small talk, we didn't need it. "I've read through his petition," she said. "It's nonsense. He's banking on you folding before discovery." "I'm not folding," I said. "But I need to know where the money went." "The $200,000 transfer, it's the key." She nodded, then leaned back. "Do you still have that contact? The analyst from Fairfax?" "Juno?" I paused. Yeah. She still owes me one. An hour later, I was dialing Juno Crest's number from Marin's office phone. She picked up on the second ring, voice sharp as ever. Didn't expect to hear from you again. I need a trace run. Clean, fast, quiet. That's how I operate, she said. Send me what you have. By lunchtime, I had forwarded her the full transaction record, plus the screenshots of the Kale Enterprises deposit. Give me 12 hours, she said. I hung up. Marin glanced at me. She reliable? She's better than reliable. She's the one who found a Cayman trail on an international wire fraud case 2 years ago when federal agents missed it. Marin gave a single approving nod. Then we wait. But I didn't wait well. That evening, I paced through the condo. The apartment felt hollow, like even the walls were trying not to listen. I made tea, poured it out, picked up a book, put it down. Finally, around 11:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. Juno Crest. Found something. Can we talk now? We jumped on a call. Her voice was faster this time, more urgent. The $200,000 was routed through Kale Enterprises, like you said. But it didn't stop there. That's just the shell. I sat up straighter on the couch. Where did it go? For more transfers, Biz, then Zurich, all bouncing through shelf companies. But here's the kicker, 3 of the shell names tie back to one woman. She paused. Cyrus Kale. The name hit me like cold air against bare skin. Who is she? Used to run fraud rings. She's been flagged on financial watch lists for years. No convictions, but the paper trail's ugly. Most people in finance know her name, but no one ever sees her twice. I felt my pulse pick up. So Callan didn't just stash money. He partnered with someone like that. Juno replied, he's either desperate or arrogant enough to think he's safe working with her. I stood slowly, heart hammering. My husband wasn't just trying to escape, he was aligning himself with a professional manipulator. The lies were deeper than I imagined. I wasn't just dealing with betrayal, I was dealing with conspiracy. The next day moved in fragments. I went to work, took meetings, smiled at clients, but inside, I was building timelines, connecting dots, stitching together a strategy like armor. Late afternoon, Juno texted again. We've got a problem. I called her immediately. They know I'm looking, she said. I got an email this morning. Anonymous legal notice. Said I was violating privacy statutes and if I didn't cease, they'd file. My breath caught. Did they name you directly? No, but they cited the exact transaction trail I accessed. Callan? I asked. Or Kale. Or someone watching their accounts. I gritted my teeth. I'll cover you. Legal protection. Marin will draw the line if they push. Juno exhaled. I'm in. But this is bigger than I thought. So was I. This was no longer about defending myself. It wasn't just about freezing assets or disproving a rumor. They came for my money, then my name. Now they were coming for my allies. Enough. I stood at the living room window, the Chicago skyline flickering like it was blinking through my rage. Callan thought I'd sit back while he buried me. He forgot who I was before I was his wife. They thought I'd fold. No. I flipped the board. By the time I met Marin again, the clouds over Chicago had thickened. Her office felt colder that morning, like it knew we were about to drop a bomb. She pushed a fresh stack of papers across the table. We're filing for fraudulent document use, attempted financial coercion, and reputational defamation, she said. The full package. I scanned the first few lines of the motion, Callan's name in bold, my own just below it. This isn't just self-defense anymore, I said quietly. No, Marin replied. Now it's war. At exactly 9:14 a.m., we filed the counter-lawsuit electronically. The confirmation beep from the system sounded like a gunshot, a clean one. For the next several hours, there was silence, No emails from Callan, no sudden texts, no veiled threats disguised as concerns. Which, in my world, was worse than noise. He's not staying quiet, I muttered that evening, pacing the apartment. He's recalibrating. Even the floorboards beneath my feet felt like they were holding their breath. I tried to work, tried to focus, but around 8:27 p.m., my bank app kicked me out mid-transaction. At first, I assumed it was a glitch. I re-entered my credentials, access denied. Tried again, then tried my secondary account, the one I used for small purchases and errands, locked. I felt it instantly, that crawling feeling down my spine. Not fear, not yet, but something colder, familiar. I called the bank. After verifying my identity for the fourth time, the agent on the other end cleared her throat. "Ma'am, we flagged an attempted login from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, just an hour ago." I froze. From what device? Untraceable, likely masked. But it pinged through a commercial IP registered to a business name. I closed my eyes. Kale Enterprises. The silence on her end lasted a beat too long. "Yes, ma'am. That's what our system shows." I hung up and stood perfectly still in my kitchen, surrounded by clean dishes and humming appliances that suddenly felt too loud. They weren't just attacking my reputation, they were inside my accounts now, inside my daily life. I picked up my phone, called Juno. "They're hitting me digitally," I said without preamble. "Florida IP." They went for the backup account. Juno didn't curse, she was too professional for that. But her breath hitched. "They're escalating," she said. "This is intimidation. Classic Cyrus Kale playbook." "I'm not afraid," I said. "Good," she replied, "because it means you're getting close." We hung up, and within 30 minutes, I had a cybersecurity protocol team routing everything: new passwords, two-factor encryption, offline wallets, private routers. I even disconnected the smart fridge. You never know what's listening. That night, I didn't sleep. I built firewalls. I uploaded backup drives. I set up physical document redundancy. And when I was done, I sat at my dining table, stared at the framed wedding photo I hadn't taken down yet, and felt something shift again, not anger, not sadness, precision. "You want to scare me?" I whispered to no one. "You'll have to try harder." I picked up my phone again, opened my notes app, and started drafting my court plan, not just to defend what I had left, but to make them bleed where it hurt. Strategy, that's what I'd built my career on. That's how I'd survive this. They could hack my files. They could poison my name. But they forgot who wrote the blueprints in the first place. The elevator ride up to the courtroom was quiet. Marin stood beside me, flipping through her folder with surgeon-like focus. Her heels clicked sharply when we stepped into the hallway, a steady rhythm that kept my nerves from fraying at the edges. I sat down on the hard bench outside room 4117, my palms flat on my knees, my spine tall. I wouldn't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing me shake. Marin glanced at me. "They're not ready for what we're bringing." I nodded, eyes locked on the door ahead. Callan arrived 5 minutes later, with 2 lawyers in tailored suits and an arrogance that could have filled the entire floor. He didn't look at me, not at first, but I saw the way his jaw tightened when he spotted Marin. Inside the courtroom, the air was stiff with silence. The judge entered, stern, unreadable. We all stood. Then Callan's attorney stood up. "Your Honor, our client has reason to believe that Miss Halden has engaged in intentional financial misrepresentation. We've submitted evidence suggesting that she moved large sums of money without disclosing the intent, violating both fiduciary and marital trust." He passed a thick binder to the clerk, who handed it up to the judge. The documents were stacked with time-stamped screenshots, claims of cryptocurrency purchases, shell company registrations in Lyra's name, my name. They had created a fiction and dressed it in legal formatting. Callan looked smug, like a man who thought he'd already won the game before the pieces were even in place. Then it was Marin's turn. She rose slowly, unshaken, professional. Her voice calm but cutting. "Your Honor, we've reviewed these documents. We've also submitted forensic reports from 2 independent analysts. Both confirm that several of the alleged accounts in question did not exist at the time these transfers were supposedly made. She turned, handed her own folder to the judge. Furthermore, the email metadata and server paths prove that these documents were created after our client filed her counterclaim, suggesting motive and intent to mislead. The courtroom fell still. Even Callan's posture shifted, just slightly, a small crack in the marble. Marin continued. We respectfully submit a motion to dismiss Mr. Voss's claim in full and to file a defamation suit against both Mr. Voss and any known associates responsible for document fabrication. The judge took a moment, maybe 2, flipping pages, reviewing timestamps. No one dared breathe. Then he looked up. Mr. Voss, he said slowly, your claims are unsupported. This motion is denied. My ears didn't register the rest, just the thud in my chest, hard, final, the kind of sound that silences storms. Across the aisle, Callan sat frozen. His lawyer leaned in and whispered something sharp. I didn't need to hear it, I could read it in Callan's eyes, panic. Outside the courtroom, the hallway echoed with the shuffle of feet and whispered shock. I didn't wait. I walked past him, past his team, past every fake smile and casual glance. But Callan stepped into my path, low voice tight with rage. You think this is over? I didn't stop. Just wait, he hissed, louder this time. You don't know what I still have. I turned just slightly and met his eyes. I know exactly what you are. That was enough. He didn't speak again. He just watched me walk away, like a man watching the fuse burn, still convinced it wouldn't reach the dynamite. But it would. It was Juno who cracked the final code. She called just after 7 a.m., voice flat with disbelief. Lyra, the metadata, it's worse than we thought. I paused mid-step on my way to the kitchen. How bad? The files Callan submitted, the ones Cyrus prepared? Yeah. They were created 4 days after he filed the initial claim. He backdated them deliberately. I didn't respond right away, just let her words settle into place like puzzle pieces clicking in reverse. Juno added, it's clean, undeniable. It's over if the judge sees this. I didn't need coffee anymore. By 8:30 a.m., I was sitting across from Marin in her office, fingers curled tight around a fresh folder stamped with evidence. She glanced over the documents, lips pressed together. This is it. This ends it. The motion we filed that afternoon included everything: perjury, falsification of legal documents, conspiracy to defraud marital assets. Cyrus Kale was named as co-defendant for knowingly assisting and providing fraudulent documents. Juno's forensic breakdown, attached at the end, was bulletproof: charts, timestamps, verification trails. Everything pointed to a carefully orchestrated digital lie. We submitted it just before closing hours. The final hearing was set for the next morning. It rained that day. Chicago's sky had a way of syncing itself with your heartbeat, and mine thundered, steady and heavy as I walked into the courtroom. Callan was already there. He looked smaller somehow, not physically but in presence. His suit still perfect, his hair still sculpted, but the shoulders were tighter, his gaze less cocky. He saw the folder in Marin's hand and blinked twice. That's when I knew he felt it too. The judge took the bench and wasted no time. Marin presented the updated findings, walked the room through Juno's evidence, layer by damning layer. Callan's attorney tried to interrupt once. The judge waved him off. 10 minutes later, it was done. All claims submitted by Mr. Voss are hereby dismissed. The evidence supports fabrication. As such, the court recognizes Ms. Halden's counterclaim as valid and will be awarding damages accordingly. Legal costs will be assumed by Mr. Voss. Additionally, this court is initiating a referral to the state attorney's office regarding Ms. Kale's potential criminal conduct. The gavel dropped like thunder. Callan didn't move. The courtroom emptied around us. He stayed frozen in his seat, knuckles pale, eyes locked ahead, like he was still computing how this happened. Outside, I didn't speak until he finally caught up to me in the lobby. You think you've won? He asked quietly. His voice wasn't arrogant anymore, just tired, hollow. I looked him in the eyes and said, no. I just finally stopped losing. He didn't answer, didn't even try. I left him standing there, like a man watching the scaffolding of his lies collapse all at once. Later that evening, I stood in my apartment, the same one Callan once tried to put in his name, and checked the accounts. Nothing had moved. Everything was exactly where it should be, untouched, secure. For the first time in months, I let out a real breath, not relief, closure. I closed the financial dashboard and walked over to my desk, opened my laptop. There was a document I hadn't opened since the beginning of this war, something I started the night I froze the first account. Now I picked it back up and started typing again. This is my story now, I wrote. And this time I meant every word. It had been 3 weeks since the courtroom doors closed behind me for the last time, long enough for the adrenaline to settle, not long enough for the quiet to feel normal. On a Thursday morning, I changed every password I owned, personal, professional, financial, every login that once felt routine now felt like reopening a wound. But I did it anyway. As I clicked confirm for the last account, a strange stillness followed. The war was over. The noise had stopped. But my mind hadn't quite caught up. I looked around my apartment, our apartment once, and realized how much of him still lingered, a photo tucked in a side drawer, a pair of cufflinks he never wore, still in their box by the entryway. That afternoon, I packed everything that felt shared or poisoned into a cardboard box and carried it downstairs to the building's donation bin. I didn't burn it. I didn't break it. I just let it go. It wasn't about anger anymore, it was about making room. Around sunset, my mom stopped by. Era brought lemon ginger tea, like she used to when I got sick in college. She sat quietly for a while before saying, "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I shook my head. I didn't either. Until I couldn't unsee it. She placed a hand over mine. "You didn't fail, Lyra. You trusted. And when it broke, you stood back up." I didn't reply. I just squeezed her hand and let her words settle in the quiet. After she left, I lit a candle in the kitchen, not for scent, but for stillness. Then I checked my phone. A message from Juno blinked on the screen. "Got the offer?" I said yes. "You were right. I wasn't built to work in someone else's shadow." "Thank you." I smiled, small, but real. Minutes later, Marin called to confirm the paperwork was officially closed, funds released, case sealed, no more hearings. Her voice was crisp with finality. I thanked her, then paused before hanging up. "Marin? Yeah? Did I win?" There was a pause, then her reply, "You didn't just win, Lyra. You rewrote the rules." I sat in silence after that, and for the first time, it wasn't heavy. That weekend, I walked through Grant Park alone. The trees were just beginning to turn, leaves edged in orange, the air sharper than it had been just a week ago. I sat on a bench across from the fountain and watched a couple pass by, holding hands. They laughed at something I couldn't hear. Part of me felt hollow watching them, another part felt relieved. Because I knew now, survival isn't about dodging the pain, it's about standing inside it until it teaches you something. I don't forgive Callan. I probably never will. But I forgave myself for staying too long, for hoping too hard, for handing over too much. Closure doesn't come in courtrooms. It comes in quiet and in choice. Later that night, I climbed up to my rooftop terrace. The city hummed below me, endless windows, blurred traffic, glowing signs promising everything and nothing. I opened my laptop. There it was, the file I'd named Exit Strategy. Funny how it had become something else entirely. I added one last paragraph: "You are not what they did to you. You are what you do next." Then I hit save. The screen faded to black as I closed the lid. No music played. No dramatic thunder in the distance. Just the soft breeze against my skin, the sound of my own breath, still alive and finally free. Before I go, let me leave you with this. I used to think strength meant staying silent, holding things together, keeping peace even when I was breaking inside. But strength, real strength, is walking away from what was never safe to begin with. If you're watching this and you've ever been lied to, used, silenced, or made to question your own worth, I see you. You're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. You are not your past. You are your next decision. You get to rebuild. You get to set the rules. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace over performance. For me, the most powerful move wasn't revenge, it was reclaiming my voice.